to the March 19th Board of Education Budget Workshop number 2. Will you please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's only the 18th? It's the 18th. Oh, sorry, it's the 18th. Sorry.
There we go.
Okay, so we're ready for budget workshop number 2, Brian. Take it away.
All righty. Good evening. And we've been budgeting right up to the deadline this evening with some refinements to tonight and to the budget. Oh. I thought she did already. Am I?
Do I need a motion?
Yeah.
Can I have a motion to call the meeting to order, please? Maria, second. Michele, all in favor? Sorry, this is my first rodeo.
Take 2. All right. So, yeah, we've been working with the team right up to the deadline here to put together this living process of the budget workshop. So just today's agenda, I just want to break down some state budget updates. I'm not sure if everybody has seen the Assembly and the Senate have kind of put forth their priorities in the last week. Want to review those. And break down BOCES, the BOCES a little bit as I refer to it. Plays such a large part in school finance and school operations. I know we talked about it at last workshop a little bit about the administrative budget and what a large part that is for us, but BOCES in general plays a large role in our budgeting too. And with our approval for that budget coming up in April, I wanted to just kind of go over a little 30,000-foot view of what they do. And then review our instructional areas and talk about the draft total of the budget, questions, next steps from here and what's going on. So first up, I just kind of broke the legislative comparisons into things that are similar and things that are different between the Assembly and the House. So this is kind of similar, but somewhat different. So the governor for foundation aid proposed 2%. The Assembly moved theirs to 2.9 and the Senate to 3%. So just a slight difference there, but similar that they both went up from what the governor proposed on the minimum foundation aid increase. The BOCES aidable salary cap, which is big for our CTE programs, from $30,000 to $60,000. They both increased that, but each are off on what year that would start. Both have funding for universal school meals next year included in their budget priorities. An interesting one that we didn't see coming is an increased funding for library materials aid. Right now we get $6.25 per student, and that looks to be increasing by over $5 to about $11 per student is what's been proposed under both houses. Allocation of funds to pay down prior year aid claims. This is something that went away with Governor Hochul's administration. Every year, about $20 million would be set aside to pay prior year aid claims. These are monies that are owed to school districts from past capital projects, past aid claims, whole bunch of things. We are currently owed $843,000. For the past couple of years, they have not paid down any of those claims. So that's a big one for us because we like to get those random funds from 25 years ago that just show up. We'd like that to start up again. Both had adjustments to the student smart device ban by the governor, so that's the same. Expanding grade coverage and per pupil allocations for special services aid for career and technical education in non-component districts for BOCES.
Brian, before you go on to the next slide, just a real quick question. Increasing funding for library aid, the one you were just explaining about, we wouldn't see those monies back to the district until the following year, right? We have to spend those
Correct.
in order to get that back. So although the increase might show this year, we wouldn't see any monies until the following.
Yeah, and I'll actually, in a couple dozen slides from now, I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. But the way it works is we take our enrollment, all of our enrollment, multiply it by that $11. That's the amount they give us. It's on a slight delay.
Yeah.
And we try to spend to that. We actually way overspend on the
Right.
library side, but very similar process for software, hardware, and textbook.
Great, thank you.
No increases for any of those categories.
Correct, it was just the library.
library. So. Some areas where they're different. So the assembly has some revisions to the foundation aid formula. They want to increase the weightings for ELL students. They want to revise the regional cost index. So for us in the Finger Lakes, we get a 1.141 multiplier for our regional cost index. And they want to phase out the income wealth on the floor. So this is one of the things that was actually in the Rockefeller report. Right now, there's a floor of how low your income wealth is. So it caps of like how rich you can be or how poor you can be. So eliminating that would actually probably reduce aid for some of the wealthier districts. So that's something to think about. And also they have UPK funding per pupil going to $10,000. On the Senate side, their revisions to the formula would adjust the regional cost index only for the Hudson Valley and New York City regions. They're proposing the capital outlay projects, those $100,000 to go to $250,000. That's been batted around for a couple years. That makes sense in New York State, especially downstate. There's not a lot you can do in public works construction for $100,000. So moving that forward. Their UPK funding is at $6,700. Right now, for reference, the bulk of our funding is at $5,400 per student. That has not changed for a considerable amount of time.
We have certainly been advocating for this change now for the last few years, and when this came out, Brian Mangtalo actually reached out to me and wanted to know, and to make sure that we saw this, because this is something we have been actually sitting with him and advocating for, and again, that's a good thing. So who knows if they actually take it or not, that's the next step, but our advocacy certainly is working.
Yep. Go ahead, Marie. Yeah.
The capital outlay threshold, would that change what you talked with us about last week about moving some of our costs to
Yeah,
capital?
if that came through, we definitely want to take a look at, right now we have $100,000 set aside to see what we could do to increase that to the 250 to be able to do that. That would be something we'd want to look to do. It gives us greater flexibility in tackling more things. I know we talked about earmarking for Plank North, fixing their lift to the stage and some lighting, but we could expand from there with doing some more stuff at Plank North. Senate had some adjustments to the zero emissions bus regulation, which were not in the Assembly. In essence, granting the commissioner the authority to approve implementation delays. So in essence, the commissioner would be able to delay it forever, is one of the ways you could word it. Also, that there would have to be independent studies of what the battery range estimates are, and not just take the manufacturer's word for it. And then the transportation aid for district electrification plan. So we're going through one right now. It's actually being paid for by NYSERDA on the tail end of that, but also that would make it transportation aid as well. Assembly, no further highlights to compare, but the Senate kept going with their items that are specific to school districts. Permanently move from $35,000 to $65,000 the waiver for all public employees. Right now, once you have gotten to 35, you're capped, they start hitting your pension. This would move it to $65,000, which would obviously create greater flexibility. It helps with long-term subs and things like that for us. It also would move the waiver date for 2 years for all school and BOCES employees.
35 to 65 means how much a person can earn after
Correct.
they've retired.
Yep, and it does not impact their pension payment.
And that number's in a calendar year, which we operate in a fiscal year, which makes it challenging sometimes for us.
Correct, yep, that's a January to December number versus our budget is, July to June.
Shortages that we have in trying to get people, that is a huge benefit for us.
Well, and this doesn't affect just education either. This is actually something that would be an effect on Other,
public
all
employees?
public employees,
Oh, wow.
which would be huge.
Yeah.
So,
Also, that something that's kind of germane to us a little bit is require all, and I highlight it, industrial development agencies, which IDA is what they use, the acronym, to include school district representation on their boards. So for us, Matt, it's called COMITA in Monroe County, or Imagine Monroe is another an acronym for our area. So those projects that we talked about one of the last workshops about pilot payments, a lot of those come through these industrial development agencies. On the county level, we do not have school district representation on those. So this would be an interesting concept to have school district representation on those. And then expand Medicaid eligibility reimbursements for certain services that are not currently eligible right now. So Senate has a lot more on education proposals than the Assembly does. I think that's fairly clear. So we'll see what gets pulled over and what doesn't. So
This requirement about the IDAs, it would be good because then we could advocate if we don't want to give tax breaks, right? Is that kind of sort of?
yeah, we'd have, in essence, a seat at the table for those conversations of when people apply and they go to vote on it. Having, what does that look like? Is it one person, one school district representative on the board that could share concerns, have conversations? Is it multiple? You know, what does the details look like for that? I know nothing prevents somebody that works in the school district from applying to be on that board. I know people have tried that in the past, but have not been selected.
With the Medicaid eligibility reimbursements, would that then, is it like costs that right now the district incurs that then could be billed to Medicaid?
Yeah, any kind of services that we're currently performing that would be eligible. I think
Okay.
they're
Like
expanding
OT,
some of the
PT.
technical things, some of the
Okay,
other therapies besides OT and PT.
okay, great, thank you.
Nice.
All right, so yep, more to come. You know, I like to read. I start my day with the Albany Times-Union and see what's coming out this time of year. So happy to share more as we hear coming out of Albany and the negotiations over the next few weeks. All right, I thought I'd do a little BOCES 101 because I did talk about that last time, about the administrative budget and how much impacts on our centralized budget. And so I wanted to break that down, and I thought I'd take it a little step further and do a little bit more about BOCES because we utilize them significantly. Many a times I've put forth resolutions for us to enter into lease purchasing agreements and other things that we do with BOCES. So I thought I'd kind of break that down a little bit too before we get started. So specifically that administrative budget, it's all Monroe 1 districts share in the administrative costs. So every BOCES administrative salary, their equipment, their supplies, their contractuals, their health care, all get put into this administrative pot. The one thing that is unique, the largest portion that we get charged back for is every BOCES employee who's retired, their health insurance gets put into the administrative budget. So that increases the administrative budget. And then that gets shared out amongst all 10 of the Monroe 1 districts based on enrollment. It's called resident weighted average daily attendance. There's multiple enrollment calculations the state uses. So this one goes through and is balanced by every single district, and that number is then spread out amongst the districts. We are 19% of the total attendance, the total enrollment of Monroe 1 BOCES. So we pay 19% of those administrative costs. Fluctuations can happen as it's proportionate to all the districts. So shifts in enrollment between districts can fluctuate that up or down. So Fairport gains 1,000 people, they're going to start paying a larger percentage in comparison. You know, if Pittsford lost 500, or if we gain 20, you know, that's really not going to change the delta too much. But if there are shifts year to year, which we saw some of this during COVID, when we saw several districts on the east side saw multiple increases in homeschool. And so they lost that enrollment. So that did shift some of the proportion of the administrative costs around. But in a large part, they've stayed stable. So that's one unique thing about that budget and why we pay the largest amount of it.
Does this include the parochial schools, or is it just the public schools?
Just
The-
our enrollment.
Our
Yep.
enrollment for our schools, okay.
Brian, it's based on kids that go to Webster schools, not that live in the district, right?
Correct.
Oh, okay, yeah.
All right, so everything with BOCES is built on this term called a COSER. And what is a COSER? It's a cooperative service agreement between BOCES and the districts. So in essence, it's a shared service that is approved by SED, so which we could buy into or subscribe and receive aid for. And so every COSER is a little bit unique. And so they really break down 6 COSERs at BOCES of services that we can purchase into. The first set is occupational education programs. So think EMCC, Foreman Center, those programs. The next block is the 200s, it's special education programs. We do these through BOCES, not eligible for BOCES aid at all. Anybody know what it is eligible for? We did this a couple years ago. Mrs. Land, I saw your hand raised. Stack aid, yes, very good. 300 is itinerant services. These are support services that districts contract through BOCES for OT, PT support, various other therapies. These are also not eligible for BOCES aid. Then the 400s are what they call their general education COSERs. This is like we do field trips. We buy tickets through BOCES to make it aidable. We buy tickets to museums and plays, all funnels through there. Specialized education programs such as distance learning items, all those, the radio station that we have, all goes through this general education instructional that is eligible for aid. And then the 2 that we spend the most with is the instructional support, so professional development, student-centered technology, so all the Chromebooks get put through here. And then the 600s is non-instructional support, which is pretty much the rest of our technology. All of our operating software, all of our administrative computers, teacher computers, are all part of that non-instructional support. So that's how BOCES is broken down into these like 6 main areas that we could buy into their services.
So Brian, do we have to participate in all those areas?
No, we don't have to participate in all of them, but if we do want to participate in some of them, there are prerequisite requirements that we're required to buy into. There's also prerequisites just for being part of Monroe One BOCES that we have to pay a base charge. Similar to how that Arwada goes for the administrative budget. So like to even buy technology at BOCES, we have to pay into a base charge as one of the districts. That is a flat administrative fee to get access to buy the technology.
So basically like a membership fee.
Correct. We also have, like, for professional development, there's a flat,
Got it.
membership fee to be able to access those, to be able to get the aid. We get aid on the membership fees too, so.
So we get allocated, that's the next slide, a budget for BOCES aid from the state, and then we decide how we're gonna spend that based on those categories? Is that how it works?
Yeah, a little bit, but the aid we get is based on what we spend,
Oh, spend.
what we spend with BOCES. We just get to determine where we want to spend it and how to use it.
Right.
Because not all COSERs are aided at the same ratio. It varies greatly. So I'll explain that with the formula. So this is the formula. It's all based on property wealth for how much BOCES aid we're going to get. Okay? Everybody's formula is identical, except the numbers of valuation, which is property wealth, and enrollment is the Arwada divided by the state assessed valuation average. So going back how we talked about the foundation aid formula, that every kid gets tagged with a dollar amount. So the state average per pupil of assessed value, property wealth, is over $1.1 million. So you're benchmarked against that as part of this formula. So what does that formula spit out for us for next year? So our BOCES aid ratio is going to be 0.639. So every eligible expense that we have multiplies by 0.639. That gives us our total dollar amount. So if we spent $10 million with BOCES, we're getting $6,390,000 back. But it is vastly more complicated than that because not every COSER is created equal. Not every expenditure that we put through one of these gets made into an eligible expense. So our BOCES bill could be $10 million, but the state could say, 1 million of that? Nah, we're not gonna count that. So your total eligible expenses are 9. And you do that for every single thing we buy in every single COSER. It's the most complicated money laundering aid ratio that you could possibly imagine. But we do it for the aid ratio because it, a lot of it's shared. A lot of small districts can't survive without BOCES. They need it because they combine together to get, an assistant superintendent for instruction or a business administrator or an HR professional. A lot of BOCES offer those services. 3 or 4 districts to combine to get those. So there's a lot of unique things around the state of different BOCES and what they do. So that's the formula. So another thing to point out, we'll talk more about this workshop 3, but that aid ratio has gone down by about 2 full percentage points because our wealth factors have moved up. We used to be around 67, now 66.8. We've gone right around there. So we're a good solid 2 percentage points down over the past year because of those wealth factors we talked about with the foundation aid in workshop 1. So some other BOCES key concepts, just to review. All revenue comes from the districts. BOCES does not tax. So everything they charge is directly from the districts. Like I said, it's an incentive to participate in shared services. The formula is based on the wealth. So the higher your BOCES aid ratio is indicative that your property wealth is pretty poor. So if you have a BOCES aid ratio of 90%, your tax base is not up there. So, and also very unique why we monitor cash flow. So the BOCES aid cycle is unique. So imagine the expenses are spent in 23-24 for BOCES. So spend in 23-24, we're going to get aid 24-25. So that becomes our aid for this year. However, not all aid shows up this year. Okay? The state breaks it up into 3 payments. We get 25% in February, we get 30% in June, and then we get the bulk of it, 45%, in September of 25. So that's right. The 1 fiscal year later, so 25-26. So we get our aid for 24-25, 45% of it for BOCES, in 25-26. It's an accounting fun thing we have to do. So that is kind of unique. And aid is paid to BOCES, who then turns around and sends a check to the districts. We do not get this directly from New York State. New York State sends it to BOCES, then BOCES sends us the check. So they put another middle person in the way. That is a little bit more about BOCES. I wanted to, just give you the background because we do approve in April a very large administrative budget for BOCES. They send it to Brian, myself, and to Heather, the breakdown of their entire budget to all the districts. And so just to give you a little bit of background on some of the stuff and where it comes from and how they're a partner in a lot of the educational stuff we do.
Yeah, actually, Brian, I think you just answered my question. So we do get to decide what BOCES, their makeup of their staff, what they're spending through their budget. And also, since we're 19% of BOCES, are we getting, like, from a student perspective, 19% of the kids in classes and things like that? Are we representing the bigger share?
Yeah, well, we got ours. So multiple layers to that. So we have representation on the BOCES board for Webster.
Okay.
Tom Nispecka represents Webster and our interests and their board, and they act just like this board, but every district has their representatives that work with the BOCES administrative team and staff over there to chart their path, I guess is the best way to say. But then within that makeup, I sit on several BOCES committees. Aaron sits on several BOCES committee. Brian sits on several BOCES committee. And then we help as a group work with them to say, this is what districts need. This is kind of the direction we're looking at. This is what we're seeing out here. And we have those conversations with them on an ongoing basis. We don't get into the picking their staff or doing things like that. There are some services that are broken down based on 19%, like we have so many slots or so many seats. That comes into play more with like EMCC programming. But as far as other things like that, it doesn't break down that way because it's all based on, well, there could be a service where, you know, our neighbors at Penfield, they want it, we don't, so we're not going to pay 19% for it. And it's based on a usage model, perhaps.
Yeah, I think where I was going more of, from a student perspective with all the trades and everything else, right?
Yeah,
Ensuring that, hey, we're, 20% of their income, right? That we're at least getting preferential treatment, I guess?
so that is also, we're not 20, all that is driven by student interest in what they sign up for. So Webster Schrader might send 15 kids that want computer tech.
Yep.
And Thomas sends 15 kids that, for some reason, all want something else. But Penfield might be sending no kids for those programs. So it's not broken down that way either because it's so much geared towards student interest and who wants that specific EMC service.
Oh, yeah, no, I totally get that part, but it's also one of those that I would expect, since we're the larger share, that we would have more available seats.
In overall terms, that
do.
would be that's accurate, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
But a lot of nuance within that
Oh, I'm sure.
overarching concept.
But we know ahead of time how many seats we have for each of those programs, or no? I mean, if there's an over,
We have a total, right?
Yeah.
All together, and that, like, it's 150-ish, somewhere in that range between our two schools.
But like New Vision's perfect example. That's a
It's
blind,
separate.
that's a blind process for who gets selected.
it's about merit, not about where you come from, right?
Yeah, like you don't even know what district kids are from. So we don't find out till after, like, oh, well, Webster got 20 kids selected this year, or some years we've had 2. And so it ebbs and flows. So, yeah. Like I said, a lot of technicalities with BOCES.
Well, and I would expect the same thing for the teachers, right? I mean, since we're doing professional development and everything else, so, again, I'm advocating saying, hey, if we're representing 19%, that we should have our representation and our opportunities within BOCES.
Oh, yeah, we definitely do.
When it comes to professional development, I would say most of the time it depends on the topic.
Okay.
There's some certain things that I'd say 50% of the people that are there are Webster. And then there might be another topic that we might not have 10% type of thing, only because it might not be something that we're focusing on as a district.
Okay.
Alrighty. So let's hit our budget areas for instructional. So I want to just coin a term that you might hear a bunch through here. It's called reduce the increase. So when you think of maybe breakage or reductions or not replacing staff members, you would think that the budget line item is going to show red if you think of a balance sheet, like, oh, we're going in reverse. But much of our budget line items, have dozens of people in them. So, and they all have contractual increases. So, not replacing one position will will dampen the increase. So it's a concept I just will be a theme. I should have mentioned that last workshop, but I just wanted to point that out. So when you see like, oh, I thought we're not replacing somebody, why is that still going up? Because everybody else that's in that budget line is still getting their contractual raises. So you'll see that throughout. So first budget, talking about professional development, is our curriculum budget, which includes the assistant superintendent for instruction, all the curriculum directors, their administrative support, all of our BOCES curriculum support services and workshops that we participate in. The tutoring center expenses, which used to be the professional development center, but we've transitioned, just haven't transitioned the budget away. And almost all, I'll say almost all of the district's professional development expenditures, some of them do live with our friends in the instructional technology that are very technology focused, with Mr. Montemero and Mr. Zimmer. So, things with the curriculum budget to point out. So what does it include this year? We have one retirement on the curriculum director side that is not being replaced. We have one retirement that is being accounted for salary breakage. So you'll see the year-over-year increase is less than the contractual requirements due to this breakage. One of the things, our non-instructional staff is going up at a higher rate than you might normally see in a contract. Couple reasons. Transfers into the open positions over the last year created a higher overall salary cost than the people they were replacing. So we've had a lot of internal movement with transfers into on the secretarial side for support. And, you know, we're constantly, when we do hire somebody from the outside, their starting salaries to be competitive aren't necessarily saving us money. We're trying to recruit, so those salaries have been higher than trend, I would say, in the past, you know, for experience and trying to grab people. So, you know, somebody, a secretary that might have been $40,000 is now, you know, $48,000. So you'll see that's why that line looks larger, because we've had some of that movement on the non-instructional side for the support here.
Just to back that up a little bit, as you know, we've talked about this before around trying to get people. A lot of times you're stealing from each other, from other districts, and it's happened to us. It's also something that and it's not intentional, but that's the pool that you get. So that's also what's, you know, to Brian's point, that's part of what's driving those costs, is they're not going to come unless there's an increase, right? So you're balancing existing people and not jumping over people that have been here, but you're also having to try to be competitive. So it is a little different market than we used to have.
So how do you deal with those compression issues if you can't recruit somebody unless you?
They don't take the job.
Right.
So we find,
But if we do have somebody that we have to pay more for, how do you address the compression?
we make
issue?
sure that we don't. We can pay more for, and again, it depends on the contract, right? And the language that's in there, that sometimes you end up paying more for experience. So we will pay for experience, which
Yeah.
is what Brian's talking about.
Okay.
Right.
So there are people that will go over it, but they will have commensurate experience that would basically validate
Validates,
that
right.
reason, yeah.
So for example, if we hire somebody that has 5 years experience, and Jade's always looking to see somebody on our staff that currently has 5 years experience, that's the one that we don't go over. But we
Right.
will go over potentially somebody that has 2 years experience.
Right, that makes sense.
Right. And even on the internal transfer side, like when we're talking, moving from budget to budget, you have people move from buildings and come over to DAO or DAO to a building where, you know, they were making more money in the building than they were than the person that left after 2 or 3 years here. So we're shifting more salary over to here, and that's happened quite a bit, actually, with our student services department. They have filled all their secretarial openings in the last year with people transferring in with multiple years of experience from the buildings. They've picked on a couple of our buildings especially, and taken a few seasoned people throughout the district. And so, you know, historically, when we'd be like, oh, somebody's retired or somebody's left, we replace them in that budget line with somebody that's got a smaller salary. Has not been the case in the past couple of years.
Right, right. How competitive are we in terms of same experience between one school district and the next? Are we?
We're as good as today.
Yeah, and it depends on the position
Right.
and the moment in time. It's because contracts get settled, raises go up, right? And so it really does depend, and we're all on different schedules of when things get put in and new contracts get negotiated. So
Yeah.
it's
That's
a moving target.
That's the toughest thing for Dave and I to do with the non-instructional staff across that, because, you know, say we have our cleaners, custodians, and maintenance. Their contract is up now, we negotiate, we settle, it's done for July 1, but Penfield's contract is up next year. And then all of a sudden, Penfield goes and makes a bunch of changes, and it was like, phew.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult to react to that because, well, we just settled a 4-year contract, and our neighbors around us are not on the same cycle. So, you know, that's like, we go hire a head custodian, or that was an assistant custodian at Penfield, and, you know, we have that ongoing across the board all the time. It's always, it's tough to hit like a steady kind of market with that right now.
So because of those contracts, you really don't have a lot of flexibility in terms of being as competitive as you
We always
want
just
to
try
be?
to negotiate that flexibility into the contract.
Good questions. Good questions.
I'm experiencing
You're
it,
experiencing,
that's
yeah,
why.
it's real. I know, exactly. That's what I was getting.
Yeah, yeah.
No, it's good.
No, yes,
Right.
I think, yeah. I
Right.
think everybody's going through that same, especially after COVID, you know, people were jumping from every, you know, just
That's
trying to
why we
find higher
appreciate your
salaries and,
perspective.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, we've had a lot of,
We got free parking, that's what,
no,
you know,
I
sometimes
mean,
you have to negotiate,
Yeah,
you know, those
Right.
kinds of things are
Add that one
the
to our list,
tangibles.
Dave. Yeah, that's a good one to add to our list.
I mean, we've had county employees that have come over for, you know, 30 years of experience left, come here, and then been here a year and gone to another school district. So, I mean, yes, we've, that,
Yeah.
all right. And then on the BOCES supplies and curriculum side, much of our professional development is funneled through BOCES for aid purposes that we try to do. Our largest cost drivers for next year on that side is continuing the CKLA curriculum support with trainings and materials. So you see that BOCES number a little higher. We don't want to lose that momentum we got going there. And then one of the things goes to the point of if we want to get, you know, let's say we're addicted to BOCES aid, but maybe we're addicted to BOCES aid and want to have access to their services, the school improvement COSER and workshops and coordination, that's like one of those base things. We got to buy into that. And that quite often goes up year over year because as more people jump into it, the costs are going up. So that one's going up not at like a typical BOCES trend. So if we want to keep participating in it, that cost is going up for us. So you see, that's one of the largest cost drivers for us year over year next year, is to buy into those school improvement workshops. And so you'll see that in the line item budget. But we did, you know, tighten the belts a little bit and reduce contractual spending in some of the curriculum areas where we could. And so just to point out those numbers, you see we tightened the supply line down. The instructional salaries, you know, the 2% increase, that's the mitigated increase. It's not what is contractually in the contract for a lot of our curriculum supervisors, but smaller increase than what would have been. And then you see those non-instructional salaries. You know, the movement of one person could significantly increase that year over year. So you see that's why it is a little higher. Our professional development, one of the dollar items is that Basket Road Tutoring Center. So the $10,000 increase there year over year is the cost increase for our lease over at Basket Road. And then you see the BOCES services in a little bit over an 8% increase year over year for $28,500. And really a lot of that is the professional development and the COSER I was discussing. So just about a 4% curriculum budget increase year over year. Our instructional budget, which is all PK-12 staffing, our substitutes, tutoring, textbook expenditures, BOCES, instructional support, centralized departmental budget, and all of our building budget allocations are made up of our instructional budget. So this is a little cross-reference. I wanted to throw this slide in there to kind of show what we've done over the past few years. These are screenshots I took from budget hearings and budget workshops over the past year. A couple of them give me PTSD from our budget hearings. But just to show you what we've kind of added and there's more that I could have thrown on here, but just to get a sense of the increase in staffing we've had for a year look back of some of the things that we've added over the past 5 years. And in the years in the primary source documents where they were going all the way back to 1920, when we started getting some additional funding with the foundation aid phase-in starting then, pre-COVID. Okay. So what were some of our instructional priorities? Try to maintain as much as what was added on that last slide over the last 5 fiscal years. You know, one of our concerns was, back in January, addressing areas of uncertainty around federal funding, and see what that would do. Right-size spending and staffing for enrollment realities as well. And then our building budgets are a large chunk of our instructional budget. Just as a reminder, buildings can decide where they allocate their funding across multiple budget lines. So this includes line items like equipment, supplies, enrichment, cultural arts, textbooks, their library. This year, funding was adjusted away from a per pupil allocation. We knew we were going to be stressed with our budget early on, and so we did some reductions, and those were allocated on an overall enrollment basis across the 11 buildings. But we still maintained each building had the capacity to make local decisions with their funding and put it where they wanted to. And we utilized last year's total budget for the buildings and then made a reduction. So you will, on the line items, see where most of the reductions were made and where the buildings decided to allocate their funding. And then one of the other main priorities that we've had over the last 4 years was elementary class size enrollment. That's come through a lot on the thought exchanges. So here's our estimates for preliminary projected enrollment. Kindergarten right now is below 500 projected for next year. That'll eke over 500 by the time we're done. But you see what the enrollment class sizes are right now and what the class average would be based on sections we're running for next year right now. This data is as good as today. It could be as good as if 30 kids moved in tomorrow. It would probably change. We have had summers where that has happened, where we've had some fluctuations, but right now this is where we're at. And so just to compare to this year, our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade is the exact same size, and K1, 2 is different by 1. So it was 17, 19, and 20 this year. We're projecting it just to go up 18, 20, and 21 as the average class size across the district at those grade levels. So maintaining fairly stable class sizes going into next year that were similar to this year.
So say that again, so the class sizes are really not changing dramatically from this year?
Correct. Right now, what we're projecting based on this enrollment and class sections, 3rd, 4th, and 5th would be the identical class average to this year, and that K was 17 this year, it's going to 8, we're projected to 18. First was 19 this year, going to 20, and 2nd grade was 20, going to 21 on average.
Is that number because we're reducing teachers, or is it because enrollment went up?
Enrollment has not gone up. It's just we're able to maintain it while not replacing some retirements.
Okay, so that's what it is.
Yeah. Being at this point with having still less than 500 students this late in the kindergarten registration process, it's telling. 'Cause normally we would be at 500 the second day of enrollment when we opened it up.
I should know this. When does that close?
It's ongoing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are the causes of that? Do you think? So families are,
Families with no kids.
It's not because of a draw from the privates or homeschool?
No, because even, I mean, if we pull our bus data of private parochial students that we transport, and that number is not going up. It's slightly lower than it was
Okay,
a
so
few
it's
years
just
ago.
the makeup of our
I think,
families.
yeah, even the private parochials have seen decreases in population. So yeah, I mean, if you look between, 4th and 5th grade to current, 50 kid drop, so. All right, so some of the specifics of this budget, when we go over the line item, instructional salaries, you'll see reductions through attrition and retirement breakage. The non-instructional are up for 2 reasons, minimum wage and higher starting wages. When you think aides, student aides, all those type of positions, we are starting them much higher than historically we have. So, somebody who retires after so many years, they're getting replaced with somebody who's making just as much as them in this day and age because of how fast minimum wage has increased year-over-year salary increases for people.
Yeah, Maria, that addresses what you asked about wage compression. That's where we've seen the most wage compression, and we've had to negotiate that into contracts. So it's been, again, a moving target that's jumped, obviously, much, much higher than, the standard of living,
Right.
and has made us kind of try not to overshoot existing people. So we've had to bring up existing people, but make it high enough to attract people from somewhere else. So that's why you're seeing that significant increase over time. So.
I mean, we have had people with longevity with us. I mean, that been with us 25 years, and what they started with, making it as an aide now. Back then, compared to what minimum wage is now, it's just
Right.
exponential. So,
Well, minimum wage is gonna stabilize, I think, is it gonna stay at 16 or?
one more year,
One more year.
and then it anchors to CPI.
Anchors, right,
So whatever CPI is, that's what it'll change to. So it will change every single year still.
Right.
Just won't be a nice clean 50 cents.
Yeah.
So you'll see those on the line items. BOCES trending just below 5% increase. Some of our larger BOCES purchases are part of this instructional budget. Our student management system, so Infinite Campus, and everything that attaches to that. Another large portion is our student data. We utilize BOCES for certification and support on that. Our data warehousing to support our data team is a large chunk. And our homeschool coordination service, also a very, becoming a larger chunk of this BOCES budget as well.
So their numbers don't get included, but we're still supported in that calculation because it's
So,
about
yes,
enrollment.
we have BOCES assist us with the monitoring and program progress. Because even though the numbers are not included, Mr. Neenan still has to certify
Right.
their program, every homeschool kid's program year after year, that it is acceptable. Equipment, you'll see this is where many buildings decide to cut back when we look at the line item. We did maintain centralized equipment lines for our science curriculum and musical instruments. Didn't see cuts there just because those are instrumental to our program. Sorry, try.
He was on our toes.
And you'll also see supply budgets were reduced, and contractuals actually show a slight increase because the reductions at the building did not fully offset the increases we need to keep pace with some of our commencement expenses, and what we rent to pull those off at Schrader and Thomas. So some of the rental costs increased greatly. So commencement expenses went up, and so that offset a great deal of what we did reduce in there, and you'll see that. So overall, by the numbers, about a 1.5% decline in the instructional budget. You see the instructional salaries going down, the non-instructional salaries, the biggest increase because of where we're starting people in those positions. You see the equipment as a huge reduction. The building's deciding not to allocate as much there compared to last year. Same thing with supplies. Tuition, a slight increase. Might wonder, what tuition do we pay? We do pay tuition for students to attend charter schools. That is what this budget is. So we see the tuition increases there. Enrichment cultural arts is another one where buildings allocated less there than last year. Textbooks also, less money allocated there at the building level. I think they're relying on some perhaps centralized support from the district to help with those textbook purchases. But I did point out textbook, if you remember, is an instructional material aid. So it's an allocation, $58.25 per kid, times our enrollment, gives us our textbook aid. So we try to spend just about what that is. And our budget, even for next year with that reduction, is over what our projected allocation would be. So we're going to spend more on textbooks than we will get in state aid reimbursement. So we're overshooting that. So just wanted to point that out. See the little less than 5% BOCES service increase, and then the contractuals up just 2.6%, but a majority of that is those commencement expenses going up to offset some of the other reductions that the buildings made.
So Brian, I got two questions. Easy one, substitutes. So is that rate staying flat? So we're not doing any increase to hourly rate or substitute rate next year?
So those are conversations we're going to have as we get closer to the end of the year. The reason why it's staying flat is because you can't find any substitutes. It's more about the total number of people than the rate that we have. So the budget hasn't had to change because we're paying more, but the overall number of subs is going down.
So you're saying because we can't get them,
Correct.
but it doesn't mean that we don't need them?
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
That doesn't seem right.
It's very similar to the scenario with our bus drivers. So
Yeah.
when you think about it that way, why did our salaries for bus drivers go up 0.5% when our contractual salary increases to bus drivers are significantly higher than that? It's because every year when I run a bus driver status report, and so for 24-25, 115 bus drivers. For projected for 25-16, I got 20 less drivers. So taking those 20 drivers off the books mitigates any kind of salary increase. Think about it the same way maybe we have 100 substitutes. Now we have 85. And now, so, all right, planning accordingly, even if we up it 10-15% on the year-over-year rate, it gets mitigated by having less people in the pool. We're just paying people more, hopefully to attract, but nobody else, we need more people through the door. That's why you see that it's been stable for 3 years, in spite of us increasing the rate. Does that help?
Yeah, I'm still trying to get my head around of you're gonna have empty classrooms and what happens if we do find subs, you're gonna have a budget decrease or budget deficit. So I'll figure it out. My other question is, so we're the salary thing, and we're going to see it every year, right? I mean, we're fighting, you guys talk about we're fighting the salary game and increases and stuff like that. Going back to our BOCES friends, what do we have in the budget here that's going to do things that are non-salary related in terms of education, staff development, that kind of stuff, so we're not always fighting the salary game, right? Make Webster where teachers want to continue to teach. Where is that in the budget?
Professional development, are you asking?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess I'm trying to,
What the
I think there's
perks
two
that are
two
not-
answers
right?
there.
Well, so I guess maybe to simplify it,
benefits.
so instead of increasing, obviously salary is always the big game, right? Everybody always wants more money, I want it, my job and everything else.
Yeah.
But to help that teacher retention, the teacher growth, And to make that so it's not always part of it, that teachers want to teach in Webster and be part of it because, hey, we develop teachers, we give you great opportunities, it's a great place to work and things like that. Where do we have that in the budget to make sure those activities are happening? Where is that included?
So a lot of that is in the curriculum budget under the professional development. Those opportunities for continuous learning all flow through that curriculum budget on the professional development side. And that BOCES line, those salary supports, things like that, Mrs. Land controls. I think there's two separate issues with the salary. We have our salaried staff. The issues that we have are hourly staff. Our aides, our cleaners, our custodians, our bus drivers, anybody that's paid by the hour and not salaried, that's where we are struggling mightily with trying to keep up with trend. Secretaries is an hourly, anybody who's non-salaried.
Got it.
So
Right.
it's two separate recruitment
No, I gotcha.
issues and kind of two distinct areas of concern.
I would just add to the professional development wise, we still have a lot in this budget for professional development.
Okay.
I would say two commitments. Number one, we actually have a contractual obligation to our teachers union that every year we have a number that we have to spend, which has been negotiated and it's everything else. The other thing is, if there was a couple of slides ago, you hopefully noticed that we had a commitment to CKLA. And when we made that commitment 2 years ago, it was a 3-year commitment. So we can't go down there. We're not going down there. And a lot of that is for professional development for all of our elementary teachers. Erin, I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to add, but.
I think it's a complicated thing to talk about as far as a budget goes, as far as retaining teachers. I think a lot happens in contract negotiations with each bargaining unit about what we think might support them through. I would say that what you don't see in the numbers here are a lot of choices that teachers do have to access some of these resources. I mean, we're always open to talking about how we can support people in the classroom. That doesn't get reflected necessarily in a number. So happy to talk more about that.
Yeah, no, again, always know there's a cost to it, and again, in my simple mind, I'm like, okay, where is this in here? Because obviously it's an important part.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you, just to tie to the number, this BOCES number is all set aside to buy BOCES professional development.
Yeah.
This professional development minus the Basket Road lease is all set aside to pay for professional development. Within this instructional salaries is not just our curriculum directors, but it's salaries to pay after hours for staff to attend professional developments. There's allocations that Erin has broken down and that she doles out to everybody based on what the needs and requests are. So it's all here and summed up into these budget lines.
Good question. Thanks, Jeff.
Nope,
Appreciate
I'll
that.
be quiet now.
No, don't. Please. We appreciate the questions.
Yeah.
Where would you have like the tuition reimbursement that you give folks if they had, I believe we have that, right? Tuition reimbursement?
Yeah,
Where
that'd be
is
in the
that?
HR lines.
Yeah, so that is, depending on who it is, if it's an administrator for tuition, it would go through the HR budget,
Okay,
or if it is through like a teaching staff
right.
member, it would actually be part of their salary and attached to them here.
Okay. So that
In the
budget
salary
number
line.
includes.
Correct.
In the salary line.
It's
Yeah.
every,
Yeah.
you think, here's a teacher, it's everything that goes
everything
with them.
goes- Yeah,
There it is.
benefits and.
Yeah.
And to tag on to Jeff's question about that, so ESA, so our paraprofessionals, along with our teaching staff and administrative staff, have language in their classroom for tuition reimbursement, as well as the offerings that we have in the district or through BOCES. So again, when we talk about retention, those are the non-monetary. Sometimes it's a monetary, sometimes it's how are you supporting someone to move from an aide position to a TA position to potentially a teaching position.
Right.
So that pipeline has been built over several contracts with some of the bargaining units to try to build from within if you can. And we have had some success with that, but, so those numbers are in there, but it's really in the collective bargaining agreements.
Good questions. All righty. So, and then on the library side too, which is tangent to the instructional budget, just break that down as well. So salary reductions are through breakage and attrition of unfilled support positions. You see the library supplies and material reductions are in line with other building budget reductions. Those building budgets also control their library supplies and materials. And then the BOCES staying flat. Those are all of our databases that we utilize in the libraries, so no projected increase there again. So overall funding support is in line with 1920. We actually still will spend more in library support than we get in state aid for projected for 25-26. So that is also a dollar for dollar as well. So no reduction in state aid there because of expenditures being shifted around. Special education preliminary budget. This is all of our K-12 special education teachers, speech, OT, PT, our BOCES placements, our private placements, and all of the administrative support for special education programming. So here's where the federal concern is going to come through. So salaries are up higher than our contractual amounts. Our IDEA grant, which is a federal grant, also called affectionately the 611, 619 grant, depending how you want to do it, the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, get about $2 million in IDEA grant money to help support special education funding. So, will it be there? Well, it won't, not. So part of this budget is to kind of take some of the pressure or stress, is to shift 3 positions that are normally paid for out of that grant over to the general fund. So if the sky does fall, not all of the sky is falling. So we're just kind of preparing, we're hedging our bets against that. So we're worried about that because our fiscal year does not line up with the federal fiscal year. It doesn't line up with the state fiscal year. So who knows when that might come through during the middle of our 25-26 fiscal year. So that will be hard decision-making for us, but at least this is a little something that we could say, all right, we're gonna take 3 positions that are paid out of that grant, shift them over so we know those are solid, they're paid for by the general fund. We can take that fear away to a certain extent. Okay. This is the part of federal funding that is the area of most concern for us because it's the largest federal funding we get.
Is that a block or is it competitive, the grant?
It's a block. It's an allocation per pupil. So generally average anywhere between 1.8 million and 2.1. So I have some variations over the years of IDEA funding that we'll get.
Does it cover the 3 FTEs plus? So even if we shifted them, there would still be some costs that we are not going to get.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd love to shift all of it, but little by little, maybe we could.
Right.
Be able to mitigate this challenge.
So.
Fingers crossed.
So non-instructional salaries, we are paying a premium for special education support positions to entice our staff to take those positions. We're paying extra for teaching assistants and aides an per hourly increase. That is, fairly good. So you'll see that going up. Also, we did have some staff that were misallocated. A lot of our one-to-one aides, you'll see were in our health services, like they were support for health, but they were really special education aides, so they've been moved over here now. So you'll see a reduction when we talk about health staffing and a greater increase here. On the contractual / BOCES side, our private placement tuition is stable, so our Students that attend Norman Howard, Mary Cariola, no significant increase there. So that private placement tuition has remained year over year the same. Same thing with our BOCES placements for next year as well. Even though tuitions have gone up with the amount of graduations we have and students that are earmarked and on wait lists, should be net neutral, so we should be good there as well. And on the supply side for special education, just a small reduction, because everything that special education spends their supply money on is generally mandated operations. So did not pull the rug out on them and do any budget cuts.
Now, the private placement tuition, is that covered by our foundation aid, or no, that's us?
No, that's
It's local.
so that's also whatever we spend this year, next year we get, it's stack excess cost aid.
Okay, all right,
So,
so that is,
You know, if it's, say a student tuition is $100,000, every year the state runs a formula that says, all right, they're $100,000, Webster, you can afford 45,000 of it, so what's left over is 55,000. We'll give you 56% of that back. So we get that much extra aid. So it's like a 3/4 reduction of cost to aid reimbursement is usually how the formula works out. So there's our special education numbers. So you see the increase in instructional salaries. That's because of the cost shift away from the grant and into the general fund. Those non-instructional salaries, about half of that is the one-to-one aides that are special education coming over. The rest is we are paying more, like we said, for aides to work in the special education department, and then everything else pretty much flat over year. Now, our student services, this is where we talk about nursing staff. So this is all of our K-12 psychologists, social workers, nursing staff, guidance counselors, along with our occupational and summer school educational expenditures. So what does that look like preliminarily? Salaries are below the contractual amounts. We've had breakage from several retirements in the mental health area, and we are reducing through attrition as well in the psychology area. You'll see that in the salaries. The non-instructional salaries you will see are significantly lower because those staff members have now been correctly placed in the special education budget and not in the health services budget. BOCES, tuition costs for occupational education are up, but we are budget neutral due to right-sizing enrollment requests. Over the past couple of years, we've talked about this, like we're adding more slots to EMCC, we're going to send more kids there. So we've actually over budgeted based on our actual student enrollment. So we are dropping what we're budgeting down more closely aligned to how many students we actually send there. We were over by probably at least a dozen spots times $12,000 in tuition that we committed to that we did not fill. So it's something we're honed in on this year. So tuition up, but less slots, same philosophy, budget neutral. BOCES Summer School, small cost increase to send students there. We don't send too many anymore since we've reworked our instructional program, but we do utilize it to a smaller extent, but cost increase there for what we do. And then the supplies, equipment, contractuals in these areas, all down based on building budget requests as well. So there's the line items. You see the largest drop is those instructional salaries, $200,000 shifting over to the special ed non-instructional line. The instructional salaries not increasing at the rate commensurate with what the contract says because of that attrition and salary breakage. See reduction in equipment, reduction in supplies, the small increase in BOCES services for summer school year over year, and then the contractual reductions. So overall, student services budget going down just about 0.5% for next year. Next up is our instructional technology. So this is all of our technology support staff, along with BOCES technology expenditures, staff and student devices, software, networking, cybersecurity, notification systems, copier expenditures, cloud computing, all of that we do on the technology side. So right now we have 20 AV and technology team members. Next year we are budgeting for 19 with a retirement coming up in 25-26. So we are having an attrition reduction there, and we are going to limit some of our professional development opportunities to rein in costs as well here. Our three largest cost drivers, it's BOCES every single year, but we're spending it, is network monitoring, which can't spare any expense for that. Got to protect the environment. Software, both instructional and support. Significant year-over-year increases on instructional software. Feel like they keep gobbling each other up, and then when they kind of get monopolized, the cost increase to us goes up. And then fiber. I would say we put a significant investment into how fast our internet is. It's never fast enough, but we try to keep up as best we can, and that's a huge cost increase for what we're utilizing year over year. We try to reduce where we can, nibble around the edges, but almost everything we do on technology we do through BOCES, and it becomes BOCES aidable. So if we reduce something there, we're really not saving $1 because we're going to lose 65 cents of BOCES aid. So we're really just cutting 35 cents on the dollar when it comes to trimming the edges here. So just the financial philosophy I wanted to point out. Same holds true for transportation. We cut transportation. You're really doing the same thing because everything's aidable that goes into transportation. So if you make a cut in transportation, you're cutting your aid too. So you're not cutting 100% of something.
And Brian, that includes the staffing side? Is that?
No, staffing is entirely separate. It's what we buy through BOCES is what I'm specifically referencing.
Have we ever thought about outsourcing some of that?
I've
of having
had
so
that
much staff?
experience, and it's awful.
Okay. The rest of us in the business world are doing it all the time.
Yeah. When I worked in central New York, there was a big push for all of us to outsource to BOCES all of our tech, and it was didn't turn out to be
Okay.
as responsive as internal. I mean, we do outsource a lot, like our network monitoring is, we outsource it to 2 different third-party companies through BOCES, so we could get the aid for being 24/7 network monitoring. So there is a certain extent of some of that stuff, rather than hiring 24 technology team members and having 4 of them stay here overnight and watch everything.
Yeah.
We outsource that.
Okay.
It's probably the
No,
most comparable
again,
thing we
just
do.
curious.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though, for technology, that the salaries aren't just shooting up, given where we've been in terms of trying to attract people. IT people cost a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. We've been very lucky with our ability to recruit quality people into this area. And, Mr. Zimmer and Mr. Montemero, give them their shout out. They do a very nice job. Really from the kids. One of our person who's probably going to get promoted next year is a Webster student who started in WTI, summer internships, going to college for it, came back, took the entry level position with us, is working towards more accreditations, going to work himself up, and in 10 years will be the network administrator.
that's fantastic.
So they do a nice job with the students we have and bringing them along and bringing them back into the program at the end of the day. So I think that's why we get lucky with that. We're not, fighting over somebody who's being recruited by 30 different companies out of our
Right.
IT.
Yeah, absolutely.
We do a lot of homegrown stuff and
Yeah.
outsource where applicable and where needed. So the technology budget you see year over year, fairly try to be flat across all areas, minor reduction in supplies. But you see that BOCES, I wish I could add $1 million into that to increase even more to try to keep up with some of the technologies on, especially on networking side, and put more into that. Because I always feel like giving our financial model year over year, we try our best to keep up with it, but I feel like as soon as the budget is passed and instituted on July 1, by July 30th, I could have used more money to upgrade to the next great thing or next fastest thing. So we're kind of always chasing our tail a little bit with that number. But I did want to point out one-to-one state aid reimbursement on equipment and software, just like the textbooks. We get an allocation times enrollment. We get that for software. We get that for equipment. So those two numbers, we spend that and we turn around and get it back. They're pretty much dead on with how much money we get year over year. So we'll spend it, we'll get it back on those two items as well. Next up is the athletics and curricular activities. So this is all stipends for extracurricular programs, coaching salaries, supervision of events, uniform supplies, athletic training, contract staff, athletic streaming services, game officials, and Section 5 administrative expenditures, all into this budget. So, couple things, staffing, no additional coaching positions. All salaries increases are contractually required. When meeting with the ADs, not a lot of room for reduction when we talked about what could we do early on in the budget process, unless we talk about limiting teams and slashing events. If you want to save money in athletics, that's really the only way to do it. We will nibble around the edges a little bit with reductions on the BOCES budget for event streaming. We're limiting the increase there. We are reducing some of the events we are streaming. That was a huge year-over-year cost increaser that we've kind of borne since COVID, when the rules were in place for limiting participants, and so we started streaming events to help with that, and it's kind of grown and grown and grown from there. And so we're kind of cutting back on that. So that's one area we are cutting back in athletics. But all the contractual expenses, those are locked in for pricing. So official fees, that's a contract between Section 5 and the officials, and it can only go down if we have less games, which equals less teams, which was not something we were looking to do. Tournament and event registration fees as well for all of our athletics, our training contract with the U of R, and then repairs to equipment are kind of necessary. So, but you will see reduction in supplies that the ADs thought they could stretch their dollars a little bit more going into next year. So here's what the line item looks like. You see the instructional salaries going up, equipment staying stable, not reducing, because a lot of those things, if they break or need to be replaced, it becomes a safety issue. Batting cages, netting, things like that. If you don't have that, it's, you don't want baseballs flying around in the field house or anything like that that aren't contained. You see the supplies going down as well. BOCES services only going up $5,000. That would have gone up significantly more if we didn't trim back on the streaming platforms because of how many different things we were projected to stream for next year. So we've cut back on that, and then a small reduction on the contractual side as well. So a very small increase for athletics and co-curriculars.
I'm going to say something that's probably very controversial, right? But I see like a bigger percentage of cuts on the instructional than we see in athletics. And I know it's a balancing act, right? I know a lot of our folks want the athletics, but I mean, at what cost are we, and how do we, balance those two things?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the first thing would be is the comparable size of both budgets
Right.
on the instructional side compared to athletics and co-curriculars. I know as part of the thought exchange, the extracurriculars is always one of the most highly rated things to keeping those opportunities. I I think with some of the reductions that we had on the instructional side are, especially with the building budgets. I think I'll say the most controversial thing over that, we have overfunded what we've given our principals on the building side to an extent where we're
Cutting
kind of
it,
just
isn't it?
correcting what they're spending.
Okay.
No, if that's a controversial saying. We significantly bolstered their budgets 5 years ago, and I think sometimes they might be just looking to spend money, so it's kind of a course correction. And a lot of things that we could get away for a year without ordering classroom furniture or certain
Right.
things like that.
Right.
You know, and some of the other attritional things, like the elementary class size, you know, we're still right in line with what we're doing this year because of that enrollment, so.
And we're monitoring that. And it's not a situation we're going to run 3 teams if we don't have enough
Kids,
students for
right.
those
Right.
teams.
Right.
And a lot of that happens at the modified level. But we are a district that definitely, students love being part of extracurriculars, whether it's the arts, whether it's theater, and we got 100 kids in a drama production at a middle
Right.
school level, or if we have 80 kids that want to participate in a modified sport. So we try to do that. I think if we were to have to do other cuts down the road, if something like that were to happen, this is an area, every area, we'll have to look at those types of things and make a decision on making, it would be a situation where not every kid that wants to do something would be able to do it really, like I said, at the modified level. At the JV and the varsity level, there are cuts, and we know that, and that's kind of the way it is. But for the modified sports, we've been pretty good as a district for 20, 25 plus years, perhaps, of making sure we have teams where kids can participate in that. So it's like Brian said, it's a balancing act, but it also is, you know, this is a much, much smaller percentage of our overall bigger budget too. And I would also say for our instructional lines, we're doing everything we can to still keep our class sizes in a fairly stable place. You know, where we're ticking up 1, which is that one example at the elementary. It's a similar at the high school. So we're not trying to touch academics in a really, really, really large way.
Yeah.
We're trying to do everything we can. So, great question. Thanks for asking it, though.
All right, so just the slice of what we went over tonight, what the largest budgets are. It's still the instructional budget in comparison to everything else is the largest with special education and student services, the mental health being next, and then our computer instruction after that. So our workshop 1 total that we are carrying forward got updated. Just pointing that out. Like I said, this budget process, is, you know, we're meeting all the time with the budget builders still and having conversations every single day. So workshop number 1, we have a new total that adjusted downward slightly, you know, because we're looking at, you know, hiring processes and who's on staff right now and are we going to carry that forward. So slight decrease in salaries on our workshop 1 from that moving forward. And then tonight, our workshop 2 total brings us to a total draft budget of $220,888,625. So that's a $9,882,555 increase, or 4.68% over 24-25. So those are large increases. So over last year, so I wanted to break down where it's really coming from visually. And so here is where 71% of it's coming from is the benefits increase. And that is unique. That's unusual in comparison. You know, debt is the next increase, but you'll see that's offset, that's planned increase. So that is coming up, but it's also going to be offset by an increase in building aid. We'll do that revenue on workshop 3, and I'll make sure I highlight and point that out. So usually when debt goes up, building aid goes up with it. When debt goes down, building aid goes down with it. They go hand in hand. So as debt comes on, building aid comes up. So to offset each other, to leave a very small overall increase, just at what we call the local share. So these are the areas where we're seeing the increase of that almost $9.8 million increase. And you see benefits is 71% of it. Just to visually see what's driving that increase year over year.
It's huge.
So some of our next step, we're still finalizing staffing. We're always refining those elementary sections as kindergarten enrollment rolls in. Still having those conversations over the next couple of weeks. Course requests at the secondary level also can change our budgetary numbers between now and the next workshop. We are having those conversations still too as well. And so like I said, we're going to continue to refine all these areas, and obviously we'll update in workshop 3 if any of those areas change, like we did with the workshop number 1. So between now and then, we got some other items going on. April 1, state budget deadline is going to get passed by the time we meet again. We have some firm things to discuss. Not sure. If I was a betting person, I'd say maybe we'd roll into the actual workshop with some news that day. So maybe a week late is what I'm thinking. Finalize the state aid that is dependent on 24-25. So right now, for those transportation expenditures, those student placements, those BOCES services, doing our best estimate, what are we going to end June 30 with spending, and then run it through the formula, say, okay, this is how much aid we're going to get next year. Estimate tax impacts for our levy limit and any other tax changes for workshop 3, and then we'll have our BOCES final service meetings and get some additional price finalization from them in the coming weeks as well. That myself and Dr. Millette and Mr. Swinson and Mrs. Land will be meeting with our partners at BOCES to finalize all of that. Something new I wanted to point out for you that I think we're proud of with the communications team, with Mrs. Cola, is this new way of trying to get information out called Budget Talks 2025. And I'm really excited about some of her ideas, always trying to refresh how we explain the budget. Proud of our website that 3 people go to look for information. Like, what else can we do to get information to people? And so this one's geared to staff. We've done the thought exchange for community and staff, but this is for staff. So highlighting different things every single week and where staff submit questions. And so this is the first iteration. And so we'll answer those questions in the second version as they roll in. And go about it from there. So just something I want to point out, another way we're trying to communicate budget news to everybody out there. And always looking for new ideas, working with other districts and what they do, and trying to get that information out to people.
So Brian, are we planning to do those also for non-staff? Communicate to the public?
So one of the things we're kind of in development is like a video series where maybe explains some of the more technical concepts, like the tax cap, trying to take that and mold it into a quick, kind of like the One Webster minutes, doing something like that, but specific to budget topics.
Yeah.
So it's something that we're kind of, like, Paul Conley, myself, and Ashley Sokola are working on and developing and, throwing ideas and, that we have filmed a few things, seeing how it works and splices together. So that might be a possibility that we're going to run out for the community as well.
Yeah, to me, it's great. The BOCES thing, right? Explanation of how BOCES plays in this. Foundation aid, foundation aid for dummies, right? Just simple 2-minute things I think would really help educate people and kind of understand where this stuff is coming from.
Yeah.
I think the benefits, that's gonna be, I think folks are gonna, they looked at that pie chart and saw that the increases, they're gonna wanna know why. And I know it's complicated, right? How do you put that in a 1-minute, 2-minute snippet? But, it's.
Yeah,
it's important for people
that's
to
been the
understand.
struggle of
Yeah.
why we probably haven't seen anything
Right,
get out there quite yet, because we are trying to find that sweet spot of
right.
getting it into a consumable fashion that isn't going to be like, all right, I'm done watching after 30 seconds.
Yeah, right.
True.
Mhm.
But I also think people understand that. right? I mean, they're seeing it in their day-to-day insurance costs within their job, right?
Right.
So when you start explaining that, hey, 70% of this is based on that, and by the way, I can easily relate that to my health insurance costs. Again, it helps send a message instead of just right away like, wow, look at this thing, right? It kind of explains it in people's regular terms.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Oh, great feedback. So next up on our road to the budget, April 8th is our workshop 3. Budget adoption is scheduled for the 22nd. May 1st, we'll have all of our published materials out. May 13th is the hearing. And then 20 is the budget vote. Very much forward, going to a little bit of a training tomorrow afternoon with our district team to learn more about those new vote machines. And so that'll be exciting and on the way here. Any other questions? Also, have the website, just pop that for everybody open, have it ready to go. You can see the first workshop has already been uploaded. All the data, all the presentations will be here too, just as a friendly reminder of where you can find information.
I just have one quick question. It goes way back to the beginning. You mentioned that, I don't remember if it was the Senate or the Assembly had put in the free lunch for all.
Yes, both of them did.
Yeah, the governor.
Who's gonna pay for that? Because if we are all, some of that is paid by the feds, and if, all the talk is correct, that's gonna be kind of wiped out, or how's that happening?
It's multi-layered. We do get reimbursement from USDA. We do get reimbursement from the state, from SED. It's kind of like a cake. Here's the cake, there's some frosting, and then there's some sprinkles on top of it as far as the funding layers are concerned. So yeah, that's a concern because the significant amount of it is hooked on federal subsidization.
Right. So is that gonna be like a mandate that then we'll have to fund?
I don't know how that would pay.
We are very curious right now. April 1 will be very telling because the governor put this out, and I think going into the governor's budget, everybody was on board, and we, as a state, if you will, for the universal meals.
That sounds good, but if
then
we
the
lose
Senate
a part of it,
right,
who's
in the
gonna-
Senate and the Assembly, I believe, just really reacted to the governor. We could see a change. They could be having conversations right now that we're not privy to, and they might not end up having it in the governor's final budget at all. And so then status quo on that, and we would just stay there. But we're just as curious as you as to whether it will or will not be a part of that. And
Well, and it could be part of the state budget. However, obviously, if there's a federal component, that, as we're all seeing, things get cut, right? So now what do you do?
Right, so is it up to the local communities to have to fund that as a
Right.
mandate, right?
I think that we would see in that scenario, the state would backfill it, but then something else would
Right.
Would hurt,
would hurt.
Would-
And
yeah.
so that's
There's no
those
free
are the
lunch.
conversations that we had when we
If
were
they
down in
mandate-
Winners and
Albany.
losers.
Yeah,
If they mandated free breakfast and lunch with no funding behind it, that would be devastating.
Yeah.
yeah.
We'd be looking at, well, we gotta do that. The only way you could do it is with a general fund transfer
Right.
to support the school lunch program of probably $4 million a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Those are just rough
great
estimates in
questions.
my
I
head.
mean,
but-
we're all feeling and asking the same ones, and we're curious in
Yeah.
a couple weeks if we get that budget to see where it lands.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Brian, thank you. This was
Yeah, thank you.
fantastic.
Great.
Thanks for the detail.
thanks, Brian. Nice job.
Thank you.
Anybody have any other questions? Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Michele, and a second, Maria. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.